Welcome into a brand new edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, presented by Nikki Rottweiler at Head Realty Group EXP. David Glenn in the house from the North Carolina Sports Network. And I had to go grab my guy based off of the nonsense coming out of South Bend. Notre Dame getting left out of the college football playoff. We'll explain why they got left out of the playoff. And the main conversation I'm hearing now is Notre Dame needs to join a conference. There's a couple things that would have to happen, and there's only one conference they can join technically based off of everything that's been signed up to this date. We'll get in with DG, who's our ACC expert in terms of what can and can't happen, and we'll see if the College Football Playoff Committee got it right. I think they did, so we'll dissect that up in a little bit more. A little bit of college football here on the Desmond Johnson Show.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been #1, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you want and get your weed wet. I'm going harder than a martyr on the slaughter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into the Desmond Johnson Show here on tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Make sure you rate and subscribe over at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio, where you can find the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, the Desmond Johnson Show, and a lot of original programming stemming from the center of North Carolina. David Glenn joining us from the North Carolina Sports Network. And DG, good to see you. I haven't seen you since before the holiday, since Thanksgiving, I believe. So we've been kind of on a weird schedule with high school football and everything else going on, trying to get back onto our regular slate here. And what better topic to bring you back on than the college football playoff and what went down on Sunday afternoon. Notre Dame not making it in, even though they were ranked number 10 going into the weekend, did not play, did not have a conference championship to play in. And because of it, Miami jumps them. And Alabama remains in, even though they're at 10-3. That third loss in the SEC championship game against Georgia, and Alabama may have one of the best wins of the season at Georgia earlier in the year. So Alabama gets in. Give me your initial thoughts here. Did the committee get it right? Did Notre Dame have a argument here, or this is the right decision? Notre Dame should be on the outside looking in.
I think that part was the right decision. I mean, Notre Dame lumped near Miami in the rankings. I would have been screaming in that committee room a month ago. How do you have Notre Dame above Miami when they played each other and the Hurricanes not only won the game, but it was a little more convincing than the final score? And what this year's committee did was set itself up for disaster because, as you said, the one legitimate complaint Notre Dame has, in my eyes, and I agree that they should have been left out, but the legitimate complaint is, how were we, Notre Dame, ranked above the Miami Hurricanes week after week after week, and then neither we nor Miami played a football game, and then yet the Hurricanes leapfrogged over the Irish on the one and only set of rankings that actually matters, the final set of rankings. If I were a Notre Dame representative, that would upset me greatly, and I think that helps explain some of the emotional reactions and even over-the-top reactions of the Notre Dame athletic director, who I thought went after the ACC publicly in some inappropriate ways. But again, I understand that part of the Notre Dame point of view. There is no way the committee should have built them up for 4 straight weeks only to pull the rug out from under them. Miami should have been ranked above Notre Dame all along, and then you would not have had that same feeling of having the rug pulled out at the last minute.
I do agree with, I think Kirk Herbstreit said out loud, and I don't think he was supposed to, that he thinks that the weekly ranking shows should go away because in the end, that final show is the only one that matters, and it causes situations like this where people are asking these questions. If they didn't get a chance to see the thing all year, that wouldn't even been there, and it would have made more sense that Miami got in because of the head-to-head. That I keep coming back to that. For me, I'm like, Notre Dame can complain all they want to, but they lost to Miami on the field week 1. Like, I mean, there's nothing better of a some sort of checklist to go through than head to head. And you guys played each other, and Miami beat you. So you finished with identical 10-2 records. And because of the wackiness of the ACC, I think we're all in agreement that I think Miami was the best team in the ACC this year.
I agree.
The two losses they had were kind of weird, but for the most part, pound for pound, from week one to here, I think we all felt Miami should be the representative coming out of the ACC. And if there was another one coming out, it probably would be Virginia, based off the way they played. Duke kind of crashed that party with the weird tie-breaking system that they have. And Duke I think Duke is going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, instead of Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame was going to go, but they decided to take their ball and go home. And that's kind of where I wanted to start with this conversation with Notre Dame. Who needs it more? Does Notre Dame need the relationship with the ACC more, or does the ACC need the relationship with Notre Dame more? Because they're full-fledged members in every other sport except for football. And it feels like the only thing keeping them from that is the money they get from NBC for their deal. And I just went to go look. They extended it, I think 2 years ago, to 2029. So they're on NBC for all their home games and select other broadcasts, NBC and Peacock. The previous deal they were making $22 million a year off of, and all that just comes to Notre Dame. They don't have to split up with anybody. So I understand that part. And then last year, getting into the college football playoff, where honestly they didn't really beat anyone on their schedule, got in, and the money they got from going to the college football playoff, they didn't have to split with a conference. So they all got that. So I get it, but it feels like Notre Dame has always gotten preferential treatment, even more so than an Alabama or whoever you want to name. Notre Dame is treated like this island that's like, we can't disturb it. Like we have to keep it the way it is to preserve college football. And college football is nothing like it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So back to my original question, we'll go off of there. Does the ACC need Notre Dame football more than Notre Dame football needs the ACC, or does the Notre Dame football need the ACC?
I think the short answer is that the ACC does need Notre Dame football more than Notre Dame needs the ACC. And the reason I say that is Notre Dame needs several things out of a relationship, whatever it's going to be, whether it's with the ACC or somebody else. And that is a place for all of the school's Olympic sports. It would be a disaster scheduling wise and in every other way if all the sports beyond football at Notre Dame did not have a partner conference. And the ACC gave them that, right? Notre Dame needs to live in a world where it has access to the college football playoff. Obviously, they did not get the benefit of the doubt this time, but overall, they still have an avenue to the college football playoff in their current relationship with the ACC. So remember, the ACC's biggest problem in modern times has been a football product that just simply does not rise to the level of the SEC football product or the Big Ten football product, not only in terms of winning on the field, but in terms of how many people watch their games. You know, people forget the ACC doesn't have a lesser TV deal because there was a horrible negotiator. The ACC has a lesser TV deal primarily because not as many people watch ACC football games as watch SEC and Big Ten football games. Now, you could say they still negotiated a bad deal, but I guarantee you, as a guy who practiced contract law for a long time and has worked as a mediator, the starting point for all these negotiations is how many people watch their football games. And that answer in the Big Ten and the SEC is way higher than the answer in the ACC.
Look at the Big Ten championship this past weekend between Indiana and Ohio State. Number one versus number two. 100,000 people watching that game in person, watching that game. There were ACC games this year where I'd flip around, and most of our schools have 40, 50,000 seat stadiums or whatever, and they're not full. Like, you know, they're half full or 3/4 of the way full. And that's at the actual location. And to your point, I hear it all the time that they made a bad deal, blah, blah, blah. But what were they supposed to do? Like, I mean, they got what they could, right?
Yes, they got what they could. They extended it too long. I mean, the ACC did miscalculate the market for live sports programming. But again, the primary reason it has the reduced deal is just less popular football product, period. The other reason the ACC loves the relationship with Notre Dame, generally speaking, is the ACC doesn't even fill those mid-sized and smaller stadiums on football Saturdays nearly as often as the SEC and the Big Ten schools fill their stadiums. You know what happens when Notre Dame is on an ACC school's schedule? They fill the stadium. That helps the ACC. Now, all that said, my short answer is that ACC needs Notre Dame football more than vice versa. I believe Notre Dame would have a landing place if it chose to, the Big Ten, most likely, right? All that said, I still think the Notre Dame athletic director went way beyond a reasonable public statement when he basically said, this relationship is damaged permanently. I mean, come on.
I think I got it right here, matter of fact.
Miami is a full-fledged member of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and Notre Dame is not. I mean, two things. One, the ACC didn't randomly pick Notre Dame out to put aside Miami's resume, right? They picked Notre Dame not to be mean, but because that's the team Miami beat head-to-head, and that's the team that Miami was near in the rankings. It wasn't random selection of Notre Dame. There was a very good reason that they compared Miami's resume to Notre Dame.
And it's not like they were talking trash about them or anything either. It's just like, we deserve to go. We beat them.
Exactly. It was not a demeaning of Notre Dame as much as it was a propping up of Miami. And the other part, of course, is if you want all the benefits of being an ACC member, join the ACC. Right?
Join the ACC.
Come on, man. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
That's the part I don't understand, where I'm like, okay, I get it. You got your feelings are hurt. The place you thought that you had a certain relationship with, they turned on you because they wanted their actual football team to get in. You got to think about where the ACC was in this situation too. It's like Notre Dame's mad at them for not taking their side, but the ACC is like, we ran the risk of being blanked out. We wouldn't have had a single team in the tournament. And Notre Dame wouldn't have been like, defending us. They wouldn't have said anything about it. They would have been in there and been just fine. So
exactly correct. And by the way, Notre Dame, even while this quasi-member, which as you said, special treatment, the ACC is 73 years old, and there is one and only one example in 73 years of a school that was allowed to be treated in this special way. That's Notre Dame, right? I mean, when Cal and Stanford got in, a lot of people thought Notre Dame should not have a voice in ACC expansion because they're not a full member. They not only had a full vote, they were adamant about Cal and Stanford being added to the ACC.
Because they play them. They play Stanford.
Yes,
they
were leading the parade. So the idea that they have been mistreated or, the mistress should not be surprised that the guy spends the holidays with his wife.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. I mean, come on.
I think I got the audio here from Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua. I think I said it right. Him unloading basically on the Dan Patrick show on Monday. It's on the ESPN.com page. I'm see if it's going to play for us here. I'm gonna stop it right there. I think he's referring more to the ACC network, which the actual conference doesn't really control what's being played on the ACC network at any given time. They kind of went on a crusade of their own and played the Notre Dame Miami season opener like 12 times or something like this past week, just to kind of hammer home, hey, head to head, we beat Notre Dame. I just don't understand the logic of Notre Dame fans where they're like, we should have got in because we're Notre Dame. That's basically their argument. We're Notre Dame. We should be there. And I'm like, no, it's 2025. Like, if you want it to be there like that, you need to be in a conference championship game. And to be that, you need to be in a conference. And if I understand the agreement correctly between Notre Dame and the ACC, if they ever choose to join a conference, they have to go to the ACC, correct? Is that legally what it is? Like, they can't just go to the Big Ten?
But there's a ... to that. When that first came out, Notre Dame, if it joins the league by, I think it's 2036, the end of the current TV deals for the ACC, it has to join the ACC. My question at the time to ACC officials was, what's the penalty?
Yeah.
In other words, as a contract attorney, it's easy for me to write a clause that says if Notre Dame is going to join any league in football by 2036, it must be the Atlantic Coast Conference. Well, the next thing you do as a contract attorney is say to both sides, okay, what's the penalty if they do something other than that? And we just lived through, remember, Florida State and Clemson forcing the ACC to back down on pretty clear legal language related to the grant of rights and exit fees and all that stuff. The ACC simply caved.
Yeah.
So maybe Notre Dame thinks that the ACC will cave on whatever the penalty is, which is not a public number, the best that I know.
Yeah, I can't find it. I
Right.
can't see
So
what
if
it
it's
is.
not, if it's either not a large number or it's not something that the ACC feels confident that they would win in court, so they back down again to let the Irish join a different league. I mean, maybe that's all part of this posturing. Who knows? We all know, Des, and we've talked about it on your show, everybody of influence in college sports believes that starting in 2030, and you mentioned Notre Dame's current TV deal with NBC, one-of-a-kind TV deal. They don't share that money. That's one of the reasons they love their independence in football so much. It ends in 2029. Well, there's a belief that there could be super conferences come 2030. There's a belief that there could be 3 different super conferences. There's a belief that the college football playoff will look very different. And, Notre Dame is going to want its place at the table in all of that and will get its place at the table because of its a football product that is much better lately than it was for decades, really. But all of these things are hovering in the background. And I don't believe that clause that you mentioned, if Notre Dame joins the league prior to 2036, it must be the ACC. Again, the bottom line is, what's the penalty if they violate that clause? And unless we know what the penalty is, it might not mean much at all.
It's, again, because you brought up Florida State and Clemson. The difference is Florida State and Clemson are actual members of the league. Like Notre Dame, they are, but not in football. And that's the thing. It feels like the ACC wrote themselves into a corner when they brought them in to begin with, just to get them in. And now they're in a situation where Notre Dame seems like they have more control than the ACC when it comes to public perception and being on these panels and things of that sort. It's one thing to be on a panel as representing a conference. It's another thing to be on there representing just a school, like just like the university. And that's for whatever reason, that's what Notre Dame's been given. They haven't won a national championship since 1988, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So like over 30, going on 40 years that it's been since Notre Dame has won a national championship. Yet we give them this, we put them on this pedestal. And for once, I thought it was refreshing on Sunday. They didn't put them on the pedestal because, again, head to head, how does the committee explain Notre Dame getting in over Miami when Miami beat Notre Dame on the field week 1? Like, and I know a lot of people are like, well, that was a long time ago. It's still the same season. It still counts. Like, just because it was back in September doesn't mean anything.
The best argument for Notre Dame would be to say that the identity of the teams that beat you, in other words, Notre Dame's losses were really good losses. If your only 2 losses are Texas A&M and Miami, those are better losses than Miami's losses to Louisville and SMU. Right. We would all agree Notre Dame's losses were better. So if I'm a Notre Dame advocate, that's what I would be arguing, right? Hey, Miami's losses were worse than our losses.
Throw Alabama in there for losing to Florida State.
And that's why if I were Notre Dame, the last thing I would be doing in the committee room is saying we belong in over Miami. I would have picked somebody else.
Yeah.
I would have picked Alabama and said, hey, you know what? Miami's 2 losses were to pretty good teams. Our 2 losses at Notre Dame were both to elite teams. One of Alabama's losses was to a Florida State team that finished with a losing record.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think, out of all the teams that made the playoff, I don't think there's another loss to a team with a losing record.
Exactly. That might be the worst loss. Yeah.
Right.
And Alabama got in.
BYU didn't make it. BYU's 2 losses were to top 5 Texas Tech. I mean, BYU has an argument in all of this.
Yeah.
Now, you got to weigh your best victories, too. And, Miami's best victory was Notre Dame. Notre Dame's best victory was Southern Cal. But Notre Dame's argument starts to run out of steam because I think Notre Dame's second best win was Pitt. And that's a nice win, but it's not a great win,
Yeah.
right? So all these things matter. How bad were your losses? How great were your best victories? All those things matter every year. But I think for the most part, the committee did a good job this year.
And speaking on Alabama, where we mentioned they might have had the worst loss out of 3 to Florida State, they also had the best win going to Georgia and beating Georgia, and they're the SEC runner-up. So
if you're Alabama, you are pounding the best wins table because they had a bunch of really good wins.
And they got left out last year, right? And there was a big raw about it, in terms of, I almost look at it like the committee was like, we can leave out Alabama and completely piss off an entire like region of the country, or we can leave out Notre Dame and piss off South Bend. Like literally, like that's what it came down to in the end. It's like we can just make one fan base mad, or entire like the most powerful conference in all of college football. We can make them mad by leaving Alabama out because they had to play Georgia again in the SEC championship game, and Notre Dame didn't have to play a conference championship. So
hey, real quick on Notre Dame. One of the reasons they have a big chair at the table is that they have a massive fan following and a massive TV presence, right? So if you're creating the future model of the college football playoff and you leave them out entirely, you don't give them a chair in voting on the framework and all that, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So Notre Dame, that's why it has a chair. And it also has had in some proposals about the future, for example, there are protection clauses because Notre Dame is just this one of a kind, not in a major conference. Fighting Irish have argued for and received promises that, for example, if they are number 10 or higher in the committee's final rankings, they would automatically get into a 12-team playoff. Or if it goes to 16, there's a clause that says if the Irish, and I forget the exact numbers, but the bottom line is the Irish has negotiated for some of these promises. That was not part of this year's rules, by the way. Obviously, they got left out. But they've negotiated for these promises based on their final ranking, and the reason they get that special treatment is that they are the only independent that draws, some games 10 million plus TV viewers, and that's not easy to do.
And so, because I was about to say, why are there not more independents? Looking at this model, like why would not other schools branch off and decide to do this on their own? But Notre Dame kind of carries the brand name, and
they don't have their own TV deals.
They don't have their own TV deal. Now, the last question I was going to ask before I get you out of here, with that TV deal, is there a world where it'd be possible for Notre Dame to join the ACC in football and keep the deal with NBC Peacock, like to still get their own money off to the side, and maybe the ACC goes like, we want you to join so you have an opportunity to get in some of these things like the conference championship and other events. You're already with us in the ACC anyway, but we'd want you to come in on a deal similar to Stanford and SMU, and in terms of taking less of the overall revenue money from the ACC in the beginning. In exchange, will allow you to keep your individual TV deal, which will probably be paying you more anyway than what we'd be paying you out from your share here. Is there a world where that could happen, or do you think Notre Dame is too sunk into the idea of being independent in football and not going anywhere?
To me, the current form is as far as Notre Dame has been willing to go, because it's almost all of those things you said, including a promise that X number of games will be against ACC opponents.
Like
that's
5,
part of it. I think it's 5. So it's 5 instead of everybody else plays 8, right? So I think that's as far as the Irish was willing to go, because they like the fact, and NBC, their partner, likes the fact that Southern Cal is on the schedule and that Navy is on the schedule, and that they have other rivalries that they want to protect. So that's why they love this hybrid of being sort of independent, but sort of an ACC member. And they're a full member in every other sport that the ACC sponsors.
Everything. Yeah. They've won an ACC championship in basketball, like here in the past 5-6 years.
Your point about bending over backwards, remember the weird COVID year, the ACC made up its own rules and said Notre Dame could play in the ACC football championship game. I mean, you want to talk about a gracious gesture from the league to the Irish. Now, I will say that Notre Dame's athletic director has changed since then. So there was a much more comfortable, cozy relationship between the previous athletic director and the series of folks who helped negotiate Notre Dame's entry into the ACC. The current AD at Notre Dame is a longtime television executive who is relatively new to that job at Notre Dame. So maybe some of those relationships are not as warm and fuzzy as his predecessors had with the ACC.
So in the end, it sounds like Notre Dame's still going to control their destiny, at least for the rest of this decade, in terms of being an independent. We're going to have this conversation again next year. If they can hold on to Marcus Freeman, I'm starting to hear rumors of him maybe getting linked to the Giants job, which would be very interesting. But if Notre Dame continues to be relevant like they are now, because to your point, like you said earlier, there was a stretch where they weren't relevant for about a decade or so, like after Lou Holtz and Charlie Wise and all that, and then they just kind of were like, and now they're getting back to being in the conversation every year. This situation feels like Notre Dame just shot themselves in the foot. If they just beat Miami week 1, we wouldn't be having this conversation, really, honestly. Or who's the other team they lost to? It was Notre Dame and A&M. And A&M's a good team. So it's like,
those are great losses. Yeah. Hey, I feel bad for Notre Dame and I feel bad for BYU. Those are two really good football teams with really good resumes. And Des, every year, whatever the objections are, they're going to be factored into the next model of the college football playoff. Does that mean we go to 16? You have to make a decision in the committee room. Do conference champions at any level, Power 4 or otherwise, get automatic bids? If you adopt that model, well, then 8-5 Duke would have gotten in.
Yeah.
Right?
And people would have been mad about it.
Right. You either like that idea for the top 4 leagues or you don't. Is the group of 6 going to be limited to 1 bid in the 16, or will they have a chance to have multiple at-large bids and maybe, 1 protected champion bid? Like, all these things have to be I've been in these rooms where you debate these things, and it is hard to forecast every conceivable scenario. It's really hard. Nobody thought an 8-5 team would win a major conference. I mean, but it can happen. It just did happen.
Yeah.
But I would not want, with all due respect to Duke's accomplishment, if I were in the committee room creating the future model of the college football playoff, I would not want to guarantee an 8-5 conference champion a bid. I mean, unless it's if it's a bigger bracket, you can
then even then it's gotta be like 24 or something, like for you start getting down to the 5 loss teams. Duke lost to Tulane. So it's like at Tulane, what I'm hoping for, and we'll end right here. I'm hoping that either Tulane, and I'm really hoping for James Madison. Shout out to Alonzo Barnett, who's a former quarterback at Grimsley here. We'll have Grimsley versus Clayton, the 7A state championship game Friday night live on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. But Alonzo was the quarterback before Faison Brandon, and he had a severe injury last year, really about a year to this day. I think he tore his ACL. And now for him to be leading James Madison into the college football playoffs, to see a kid that I watched and called here for years to be in the situation, that's the one thing I think that could upset the apple cart. If like James Madison or Tulane just somehow figure out a way to get to like the last 4 teams or something like that, just to disrupt everything, then you got a whole other conversation where you got to be like, well, we can't just be the Power 4 get these or whatever, because they just proved that they belong, they believe here. So there's a lot to look forward to. I'm really interested in this bracket. In the end, though, I think it's still Ohio State's to lose. But hey,
I'll be surprised if
any in Indiana
win in this opening round. We'll see. I mean, I'm not rooting against James Madison or Tulane or any underdog, but the home teams look significantly better to me in this opening weekend. And we have to wait and see. Remember last year, all the first week winners went and beat all the teams that had first round buys.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 all got eliminated in the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Ohio State was like what, the 7th seed or 8?
I don't think that'll happen again. Yeah. But all these things will be, as you're saying, will be factored in. And by the way, as you enjoy that former player from your backyard, don't forget Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti was the head coach not far from you at Elon University for a few years at the FCS level. What he's doing with the Hoosiers is one of the great turnarounds in college football history.
It's insanity. And I think I was 2018. I was at WSJS, and I think we had him on for like weekly interview segments or something. I think when I was producing The Drive. So. And who knew that when that was going on, that 6 years later, 7 years later, he'd be atop the hottest team in college football at Indiana, of all places. The only
13-0 Big Ten champion, Indiana.
Yeah, Big Ten champs, number 1 in the country. He's lost 2 games in 2 years. Like it's And I'm really curious to see what Indiana does here, because that's something that people don't like to talk about outside of the blue bloods, when like Alabama or Texas or whoever win it. You start saying Indiana and college football champion, like it's like it hurts. It hurts my mind to like think about it, but here we are. And hopefully Indiana can hold on to him too. I think they just extended him because they kind of understand what they got. So we'll see. This all starts this upcoming weekend. And we'll be back a little bit later on this week, our NFL roundtable with the winning the division host Ryan Smith and former NFL tight end Ben Troop. I might try to grab one more person for that roundtable. We'll get you ready for the NFL weekend coming up here a little bit later on this week on Friday. This will actually drop on terrestrial radio on Friday as well. Multiple stations across Greensboro and Winston-Salem, so look out for it there. The video is already available over at the YouTube channel for Tobacco Road Sports Radio. But for DG, this is Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Desmond Johnson Show. We'll see you guys a little bit later on this week.